I always hate following Photoshop because it's so cool. But I got to do it, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the web. Where are my web designers in the audience? All right, cool. Hey, you guys know something's happening on the web, right? You know something's happening on the web. Yep. What's happening on the web these days? HTML5, right. We hear a lot about it. But the question that I have for you is, can you use it? Can you use it today? People ask me this all the time. Okay, yeah, you talk a lot about HTML5, you talk about CSS3, all these great technologies, but can I use them today? Yes or no? Yes, absolutely. I can prove it to you. How many of you went to this page to sign up for the tour here? Hey, a bunch of you, all right? Did it look okay in your browser? Yeah, of course, otherwise you wouldn't be here, right? It looked okay in your browser? Well, let me tell you something. This is an HTML5 page. Ooh. It looks like any old boring web page I've seen on any website in the world. And that's the point. HTML5 is an evolution. It's not something radically different. It's an evolution of HTML. Let me prove this to you, show you that this is, in fact, HTML5. I'm going to show it to you right here inside of Dreamweaver. Here is Dreamweaver CS5.5. With Dreamweaver CS5.5, our main goal was to keep up with the web. And that means to embrace HTML5 and CSS3. So what we've done here is I'm showing you this page as it appears in Dreamweaver. It looks exactly the same way that it looked over there in my browser, but I'm going to go ahead into split mode to show you that, yes, in fact, it is HTML5. How do I know? Because I'm looking at that very first line of code that says doc type HTML. That's the HTML5 doc type. That's what the browser sees first and says, dude, I got an HTML5 page. Exciting, isn't it? Of course, that probably is not very exciting for any of us, a doc type. Woohoo! But that is what HTML5 is about. It's a new doc type. But it's also about some other things. It's about new elements as well. Let's scroll on down here into the page and actually see that we've got some of those new elements happening. Things like header right here. Header is a new element in HTML5. We also have things like section. Oh, another new element in HTML5. In other words, one of the things about HTML5 is we have a whole bunch of new tags. That got you really excited, I know. That's probably the most boring part of HTML5. New tags. Woo! So what? Well, so what is the fact that with HTML5 and this evolution, we're actually getting closer to being able to realize the initial dream of the web, if you will, the goal of the web, and that was to semantically mark up content. To say, hey, this is the header of the page, this is the footer of the page, this is the navigation of the page, so that not just our browser, but other assistive technologies know what's going on a page. Now, again, by your rousing excitement there, I can tell you there's got to be more. And yes, there is. But before I show you that, let me just tell you that Dreamweaver also has embraced that HTML5 through its new document dialog. When we begin a new document, now if you are still back on a previous version, you might remember that we had new starter layouts. These starter layouts are basically frameworks of a page, if you will, that are CSS and HTML that are already marked up and ready for you to begin modifying to make your own. So if you are doing your pages in CSS, we are all doing CSS today, right? We're not building in tables anymore, are we? No, of course not. If you are doing CSS, the fastest way to get started is through one of these starter layouts. Now, you can choose any one of them. I'll take a 2-column one here for a moment. By default, if you have not changed this, then by default in your version of Dreamweaver, you are probably set to an XHTML doc type because that was the default in Dreamweaver, even in Dreamweaver CS5, it was the default. But now, of course, as you can see, we have the option of saying HTML5. So I can create this document, go ahead and do so. You can see here in the design view, not exciting, not beautiful, was never meant to be. Because all this is, again, is a framework. Now, please do remember that behind the scenes, we have not only written or marked up the code, we also have given you CSS with some great instructions. That's all this gray stuff. Those are actually comments telling you all about this CSS, so you know what to do. Now, as I said, this is an HTML5 document. However, these starter layouts do not contain any of those new HTML5 elements. You can add them yourself, but they're not there by default. If you would like to get started with them, however, we can go and choose one of the new HTML5 starter layouts. So we have both a 2-column and a 3-column layout. So choose either one of these. Again, as I look at the page, it looks exactly the same way that the other one looked. But of course, behind the scenes, we have header, we have nav, we have aside. Further down, we have article, we have section, and all the way down at the bottom, of course, is the footer. Now, again, these are those new HTML5 elements. Let me just talk to you a little bit. Let's ignore Dreamweaver for a moment. Just talk about HTML5 for just a second, because I want to make sure that you don't get too hung up on all of this as you dive into HTML5. The idea, as I said, with HTML5 is to semantically mark up content. Now, you think about that and you say, okay, well, I've got a footer. Where does a footer go? At the bottom of what? The document, I hear you say, which would be correct. But I'll just cut it out. And let's head up to the top of the page. And right here, in the header, let's paste it in. I've now put my footer in my header, and it hurt. Ba-dum-tsh. Is that legal? Is it? Yes or no? Very simple question. You got a 50-50 shot at getting the right answer. Is that legal? Yeah. Absolutely. Because, again, remember, with HTML5, it's all about marking up the content semantically. I can have a footer in my header. I can have a header in my footer. You can, that would actually really hurt. But anyway, you can do whatever you want. All right? Don't get too hung up on, ooh, should this be an aside or a section or an article or whatever. Don't worry about it. Because guess what? I've got a news flash for all my web designers. You and I, we're the only geeks in the world that actually view source. Your mother doesn't even know how. Okay? So don't get too caught up on it. So my bigger question, I guess, is, okay, I've got this all marked up. Is this going to display okay? Is this going to render okay in the browsers? The answer is yes. All the modern browsers are viewing this content perfectly. All these HTML5 tags. So Safari, Chrome, Firefox, Opera, they all do it. So there you go. Did I miss anyone? No. Yes, of course I did. Who did I miss? Internet Explorer. Explorer. Killing the web since 2000. No. Internet Explorer 9 actually renders this page exactly like those other browsers. It knows it. It knows all about those new HTML5 tags. What about the older versions of Internet Explorer? 8, 7, 6. Screw them. No, we need to deliver our content to them as well. And that's what these starter layouts do. Internet Explorer 6, 7, and 8 will also render this page exactly as those other browsers do. How do I know? Because I know that we have included this little piece of code. This is called an Internet Explorer conditional comment. You familiar with those? An Internet Explorer conditional comment is read only by Internet Explorer. Firefox, Safari, Chrome, all those good browsers, they look at this and go, Internet Explorer, on the other hand, says, yippee, something for me, I'm special. And it begins to read. And it says right here, if less than crappy browser 9. I kid my friends over at Microsoft. If you are less than 9, in other words, you are Internet Explorer 6, 7, or 8, I need you to do the following thing. I need you to do this line of code. This line of code is a JavaScript, commonly known as the HTML5 shiv. This little piece of JavaScript was written by a guy right here in England, a guy by the name of Remy Sharp, who is a really brilliant guy and really knows his stuff, and was kind enough to dig into Internet Explorer, create a JavaScript that makes Internet Explorer 6, 7, and 8 recognize the new HTML5 elements and display them properly. And he open sourced this, put it up on Google Code, as you can see, and we have linked to that. So if you are doing HTML5, that's all you need to do. Link over to that shiv, and Internet Explorer 6, 7, and 8 are going to love your pages just like all the good modern browsers, including Internet Explorer 9. Pretty cool? All right. Now, let's dive into some actual production here. Go ahead and close this page. I want to show you the page that we have received from our designer. Over the course of the rest of this section, and then in the next section, I will build this page for you. But before I do, I need a little bit of help from my web designers out there. Do you like the design? You better say, yes, I did it. It's the most beautiful design you've ever seen, right? But I did it with a goal in mind. I wanted to actually do everything that would be a nightmare to do the old way, in the old HTML way. What are challenges? Any challenges that you see? This is the interactive audience participation portion of the show. Yell it out, it's okay. What do you see first that would be a challenge for you today? Ooh, rounded corners. Absolutely. We see a boatload of rounded corners. You do realize if you are doing an HTML5 page today, you must round all of your corners. It's in the spec. It's a law. The HTML5 police will come and get you if you do not. No, that's a joke. But yes, rounded corners, very difficult. Okay, what else? Oh, there's a video there. Okay, we're going to need to address that. I heard another one. Transparency, right. We are actually viewing the background through the columns of text. Ooh, very, very difficult. Okay. What else? Oh, there's rotated text up there on a gradient background as well. Ooh, even better. All right. So, in other words, a lot of challenge. Oh, how about the background itself, by the way? It's filling the entire page. Can you imagine how big that JPEG's got to be to fit on a 30-inch monitor at full screen? Wow. Okay? But all of these challenges can be overcome. All of these challenges can be overcome with HTML5 and CSS3. So let's head back over into Dreamweaver to look at that. Now, I've actually got the page started a little bit. So let's go into Design View. And here's an issue that I've had with Dreamweaver. Now, I've been around Dreamweaver. I've been actually working on Dreamweaver since the very first version. And a pet peeve that I have had with Dreamweaver since those early days is Design View. It sucks. Yes, you heard me say that. Design View sucks because it never really renders the page exactly like it's going to be in the browser. So that's why we wanted to fix that. Now, you might remember in a previous version of Dreamweaver, we introduced something called Live View. Live View, when I turn it on, tells Dreamweaver you should become the browser. So this is actually the view of this page in the browser. Which browser? The browser. The browser known as WebKit. Anybody ever heard of WebKit? A few people? All right, for those that don't, how about Chrome or Safari? Ever heard of that? WebKit. WebKit is the engine that powers Chrome and Safari and actually powers a lot of those mobile browsers that you're seeing. If you surf the web on an iPad or an iPhone, it's also WebKit. If you surf the web on an Android phone, the browser is powered by WebKit. Okay, so this is actually the way that the most widely used browser in the world displays the page. With Dreamweaver CS5.5, we've updated the WebKit that we built in there to the latest and greatest version, the same version that's out there in Chrome and Safari right now. So you can build your pages right here in Dreamweaver, look at them in live view, and know exactly how they're going to render. But not just look at them, you can actually work. So let's do a little bit of work, and again, I will continue on a little bit later, but I'm going to just do something very simple to start us off. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take and make that transparency, all right? Each one of these columns need to be transparent. So as I click on them, sort of watch my CSS panel because it's going to change. As I'm clicking around, wherever I click, it's actually changing to show me the cascade of style sheets representing the the item that I have currently selected on the page. Now, each one of these columns has a class attached to it called EQ height. Notice as I click into this one, it has EQ height. This one over here, it has EQ height. This one over here has EQ height. And EQ height is actually the rule that is setting the background color. So I want to actually change that now, but I have a problem. Zooming in here, you'll notice I am using the good old familiar hexadecimal color scale. FFF is white. 000 is black. And that's all I know. Blue, anybody? No clue. And that's why hexadecimal colors are stupid. But we've been using them for all this time on the web because we had no choice. But what I would like to do now is to use a different color scale. I'm going to move this down just a little so you can see. I want to use a different color format that you might have actually heard of. RGB or HSL, hue, saturation, and luminance, if you would like. And each one of those, HSL and RGB, have another one with an A on the end. The A stands for alpha. And so I'm going to say, hey, let's go to the RGBA scale. And as I'm moving around, notice right up here, we are getting the RGB values. Not only of this, but if I sample a color from anywhere on the page, I will get the RGBA value of that. So I'm going to choose that and say, great. Now, we did not see a change over here in our column because right now we have the last value here as a 1. That means completely opaque. 0 means completely transparent. So we are simply going to remove the 1 and give us another value. Let's say something like 0.7. As I make the change and confirm that, you can see that we are now looking through all of our columns. Pretty cool? I'm doing it. I'm making changes. Did you notice I'm not in design view? I'm in live view. So any of the changes that I'm making are being immediately reflected on my page. I'll show you a little bit more a little bit later.